This is our anniversary. It was a long time coming. When we started this church from the very beginning, we had people like, well, starting churches are hard, they're tough, and you got to really be really dedicated. And 50% of the churches that start fail within the first year, and then another 50% are going to fail within the first 2 years, and so the likelihood of you failing is going to be miraculous, and that's just going to be what's going to happen. And I'm like, man, that's some good encouraging words. Thanks for that. Give me some more of those statistics later. I'll appreciate it. And really, it was kind of out of a lot of frustration. I knew God wanted us doing more than what we were doing, and we kept looking to God and praying to God. God, what do you want us to do? Where do you want us to go? And I didn't want to start a church, and I know some of the people with us, we didn't want to necessarily, that wasn't our thing. We got together like, man, starting a church. We were all like, are you sure this is what we want to do? It sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of toil and struggle, and none of us had ever done it before, and none of us had been a part of it before, and you're going to ask me to do what? And I need you to do what? We had people that were stepping up doing things they had never thought, teaching kids and running the books and getting the church started, and it was a whole lot of stuff that we had never done before, but it was something God called us to, and there's part of me that thinks back to that so many years ago, and I wish, what if things were different? What if we had tried things different ways? What if I had gotten those jobs that I was looking for at those different churches, and this never happened? And I can look back now honestly and think of all the opportunities that we would have missed not having this group together. All the people that we would have never encountered. Half of you in this room I'd have never met if it wasn't for the fact that this church exists, the fact that we were here together, and many more people on top of that. And I think one of the things that we sometimes are bad about doing is we're always good about talking about, hey, here's our struggles, and right now we're struggling to get ourselves a new space and a new building, and we've got some news working on that. It's kind of a hurry up and wait sort of stuff. We're talking to a church about sharing their facilities with them, and they said, we've got a meeting in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, we can get it approved, but you have to have patience. Let us talk to our people in 2 weeks. And so hopefully 2 weeks from today, we'll be able to have some, at least some traction on where we're going with the direction of the church in the future, where we're going as far as our location. But that doesn't change where we're going as a church. We talk about here's our struggles, and here's the things that are going in our own lives, and here are the things in the lives around us. But do we spend time just celebrating? Just being excited about great things. I mean, we celebrate birthdays, we celebrate holidays, we celebrate great achievements. I mean, something happens, one of our kids, gets put into the ball game, and we cheer like crazy. We celebrate lots of stuff. And when we think about the church, do we think about this is a place to celebrate? And I wish we would more, because the Bible is full of celebrations. We don't think of it as celebrations because it doesn't seem like our kind. There wasn't a cake, there's not candles on top of it, nobody's singing fancy songs, but the Bible is full of celebrations. It was constantly God telling His people time and time and time and time again, hey, this happened, let's celebrate it. Hey, this happened, let's celebrate it. Hey, something else went great, let's celebrate it. And do we get into the habit of celebrating the great things that God's doing? I know some people that will tell you, hey, this is the day that I got saved. I know exactly when it was. I know the moment and know the instant. But how many other things do we know? I mean, we have landmarks in our lives. As families, we have landmarks of, I know exactly when my kids were born. I can tell you what the day looked like. I know when it was raining and on the day that Ransom was born. And I know what was happening on these different days when we were going different places. I know these things that were going on. They're things that we celebrate. But what are the things that we celebrate as a church? What do we lift up? In fact, we need to celebrate. The Bible calls us to celebrate. And there's several reasons. There's lots of reasons why the Bible calls us to celebrate. And so today, we're going to start off talking about what do we celebrate, or why do we celebrate? We celebrate to do what? To what end? And we're going to spend all month celebrating the history of our church. I know it's a short history, but you know what? A short history, I heard a guy talking today that you have to win the first game in order to win all the games, all right? It takes year 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order to eventually get to year 50 and to get to a year 100. And so we can celebrate year 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so all month long, I want you to be expecting and anticipating us bringing up new things or bringing up old things from the past and bringing them to light so that we can share them once again. But today I just want to talk about why the Bible calls us to celebrate. We celebrate too. Well, the first thing we do, we celebrate to remember the past. The past is important. It's important to remember where we came from and why we came to the place that we came from. It's important for us to remember back how many of us in our faith were at a point that maybe we shouldn't have been before we showed up here at this building. You know, the times that we had gotten disheartened with church. I mean, I had stopped preaching for several years, and it was one of those things. I was like, you know what? I'm just tired of coming. I'm tired of just showing up and just being a part of a church. I need a break. I know there were a lot of us that talked about how we just needed a break from church, or church had burned us somewhere, or where we had gotten off doing our own thing and we had our own life problems, our own life issues, and that was what was important. And remembering the past, knowing where we were, helps us to appreciate where we are and where we're going to be. And there was a verse out of Samuel chapter 7, verses 10 through 12. It says, while Samuel was offering a sacrifice, the Philistines came within range to fight Israel. And just then, God thundered, a huge thunderclap exploding among the Philistines. And they panicked, mass confusion, and ran helter-skelter from Israel. And Israel pulled out of Mizpah and gave chase, killing Philistines right and left to the point just beyond Beth-kar. And Samuel took a single rock, and he set it upright between Mizpah and Shen. And he named it Ebenezer, Rock of Help, saying, this marks the place where God helped us. In the Bible, we always see celebrations. And one of the things we often see at celebrations is we see the people of God setting up a way. This is something for me to remember. I know the name Ebenezer gets bad, rap nowadays because we think of Scrooge and all that stuff back in the day. And I certainly would never name one of my kids Ebenezer. It wasn't even on my list, and I had a lot of weird names on my list. But Ebenezer wasn't even on my list. But Ebenezer is one of those great old biblical words. It was the name of a rock. Samuel had a pet rock. He named it Ebenezer. And he set it down. He said, every time you come and see Ebenezer, every time you come and see this rock, I want you to remember it was where this rock was that something happened. It's where this rock was that God was doing big things. It was where this rock was that God delivered us. Do you have an Ebenezer? Do you have a place in your life where you can come and say, at this rock, something happened? I mean, I know in my life, when I think back to this church, there's a lot of Ebenezers. I work now close to our old house where we used to live. I can't help when I drive past that house, the thing of all the things that I remember about that house. I remember the meetings that we had in that house. I remember sitting in that living room, and we would pin a sheet onto the ceiling so that we could shine a video up on it and watch a video if we were doing a video. I remember the dog freaking out because it thought the person was real and in the living room and couldn't figure out how to get behind the sheet to get the person. I remember having the barbecue where we put too much lighter fluid on and lit half of the backyard on fire trying to get ready. I remember having the cleanest garage I've ever had because I knew that my children would be on that floor and they would be worshiping God on the floor in that living room, in that garage. I remember that it was a place where we came to worship God, and that house to me is an Ebenezer. To me is one of those things that reminds me forever and forever that God was here. There was a lot of stuff about that house I didn't like. I mean, we struggled with the landlady, and we had problems here and there, and it never was, it had allergy stuff like you couldn't imagine bothering the kids. But when I see that house, I don't remember those things. I remember here we met with God. I see so many of y'all wearing different T-shirts that we have. And for me, I think Samuel would have made T-shirts for all of his people. I think, he'd been like, here's a rock, and then everybody needs to come get your T-shirt that has a picture of the rock on it, right? Because we wouldn't have gone walking back there, all right? But that's how we do it today. We want to remember something, that God was here. And I remember those old original All Things Fellowship shirts, and we need to, one of these days, come back with the new All Things Fellowship shirt. It had the little bitty logo. I remember Lily and I, we went to go get this shirt, and the guy was working with us like, I want this logo, and we got it. It was little bitty. I'm like, wow, that's really small. And he wouldn't give us the color shirt we wanted. We're like, we want this color shirt. He's like, you need to have Kevin and I needed some big shirts at the time. He's like, the big shirts don't come in that color, so I won't give you any of the shirts that color. I was like, Kevin and I will take a different color. Just throw it on a different color. But they wouldn't give us the color we wanted. And I remember it being frustrating. But every time I see that shirt, what I remember is I remember us all wearing those shirts and doing the parade, where we took our old jungle gym that the kids never used anymore, and we covered it in a tarp, and we painted sewed a big face on the front of it, and it was a big happy face. And we drove down with a jungle gym on its side with a big happy face on the back of a trailer for no reason. And then it rained a lot. And we handed out. Yeah. I remember those things. And you know what? Remembering the past reminds me of why I'm here today. It reminds me of why I show up. I mean, I see kids wearing their Keep Calm shirts, and I can't help but remembering us wearing Keep Calm shirts the exact same day a tornado was coming right down on top of us. And it's serendipitous. Hey, you know what? We're teaching our kids, keep calm, God's in charge. And God is in charge. We remember the Ebenezer, the rock. I could have found a bunch of big rocks out of Broadham Forest. We'd have built an altar right here. The big rocks. It reminds us to remember God. We celebrate to remember the past, to remember what God's done. We also celebrate for another reason. We celebrate to restore what is broken. We celebrate because it helps us to restore what is broken. There was a young man, super young, 8 years old. So look around and see our 8-year-old. We don't have any 8-year-olds left anymore. They used to be 8-year-olds. I know, they're coming. Well, we got some little. I know. I remember we first started, everybody was 8 years old, right? They were all little bitty. Yeah, they were all little bitty. You're not 8 years old. But 8-year-old little kid. His dad dies. His dad is the king of the country. And this 8-year-old little kid becomes king. Young. I mean, that's putting Alexandria in charge of everything, all right? She becomes the king of the world, all right? Becomes the king of the country. And the country is messed up. And I think this is like the first Disney story, because you know how it is. The little kid gets in charge, and he fixes the nation. This little kid becomes king of the entire nation. And he's like, you know, I remember in my studies, I remember going to school, them talking about the temple and talking about all this other stuff. He's like, it's cool. I wish that the temple looked like it did in the past. And so he goes in and he cleans the temple up. He has special people. He hires them to come and fix it up. And as they clean the temple out, they find a copy of the Bible. And in fact, nobody had remembered seeing a copy of it for years and years and years. For decades, none of the priests had ever even read it. They were priests at the temple just doing whatever they thought they should do. But none of them actually had a copy of the Bible. And they open it up for the first time. Now, it's just the Old Testament, you know, it's the old Torah. They open up the Torah for the very first time in years, and they start reading it. And they read it to the king, and the king says, oh my goodness, we're not doing any of this stuff. And he remembers what they should be doing. And he says, we've got to get stuff right. It says the high priest Hilkiah reported to Shaphan, the royal secretary, I've just found the book of God's revelation, instructing us in God's way. I found it in the temple, and he gave it to Shaphan, and Shaphan read it. And then Shaphan took it to the king, and the king said, we got to do all this stuff. And the king went and he tore down all the terrible things. He tore down all the altars, the other gods. He tore down all the things that people were doing that were wrong. He cleaned out the temple. He brought in, you know, scrub brushes, and they scrubbed it down. They made it nice and immaculate. They got it set up just like God commanded. And then the king commanded the people, celebrate the Passover of God, your God, exactly as directed in this book of the covenant. Josiah knew that it was important for the people to celebrate. in order to finally say, we have been restored. We have been redeemed. We have overcome. They had for so long fallen away from God. You may have for many years fallen away from God, but you need to have a moment where you throw your hands in the air, you yell touchdown, and you say, I'm there. I've been restored. And we celebrate. We were really bad in the past in churches that I grew up with. We were like, you know what? The Bible says once you get saved, you're always saved. And somebody comes down and is like, well, I got saved when I was a kid. It's like, okay, well, that's good. We'll just take care of it. And they shuffle you off. I don't want to be that kind of person where you have a personal victory in your life. And we're like, well, it's about time. Come on, let's get going. I want us to be the kind of people when somebody shows up and says, I've had a victory in my life. I've had something go right in my life. This is how God's changed me. That we in one accord are like, let's celebrate that. That is something worth celebrating, jumping up and down about. I want you to know that people here get more excited about great things going on in your life than the world does when they pull you down, because the world loves to pull you down. They love to get excited about, hey, let's go out behind the bleachers and do something we shouldn't. All right, the world gets super excited about, hey, man, were you hanging out with that girl the wrong way? The world gets super excited about, hey, could you work the books just a little bit so that I can take a couple extra hours off when I know I'm not supposed to today? The world loves to get excited about us doing wrong things about us falling and failing. The world loves to have TV shows and everything else that out there celebrating people that are messing up and screwing up and doing things they shouldn't do. And what we ought to do is we need to counter that every single day by celebrating people that are restored. By celebrating with people that have been redeemed. That ought to be our job every single day. It's why we make a praise wall over here on our prayer requests, because we want to desperately every single day say, here is something God has done. Praise God, praise Jesus. I mean, from day one, we prayed that we might one day have a church van so we can go around and pick up kids. I remember Mike smiling really big when we were going to camp, driving a church van with a trailer behind it. And I could see it in his eyes. Praise God. We prayed. God delivers. We celebrate. All right? We celebrate. That's what God calls us to do. Man, we're running into the end zone. We're high-fiving people. We're excited. We're celebrating. Because God restores. Because God restores. Why else do we celebrate? We celebrate to reward the triumphant. We do a victory lap. I teach my kids, when they score in football, they need to act like they've been there before. Right? And, or whatever it is that they do where they score. There's got to be a little bit of humility in your life. You know what? I'm cool with that. When you're dealing with other people, because we're all in this boat together, this planet that's zooming around the sun. But when it comes with stuff of God and Satan, you know, we talked the last week when we did the whole message about Jesus Christ, or 2 weeks ago, and we talked about Jesus winning all things at the end of all things, that Jesus was the King and the Prince and the Lord, and we were going to start kicking some, royal booty when we get to the end of all things. You know what? Jesus is not like, this is the time to be humble. Jesus is like, this is the time to start stomping, all right? If we spend our whole time going to Satan like, what? What are you going to do? It's my Jesus, all right? I'm cool with that. I'm cool with you being a little bit excited about your Jesus. I'm a little bit cool about you taking a victory lap when you and Jesus go walking across the threshold of whatever it is that Satan's been beating you down on. Satan's getting you down because you got some sort of substance you can't kick, or, for me it's jelly donuts. If Satan's beating you down because you can't stop using that language you're using and you're working on it, and you beat that door down, I have no problem with you doing a victory lap, all right? You want to do it in here? Throw your hands in the air, run around a circle, all right? We'll celebrate with you. I have no problem with a victory lap when we're telling Satan, yeah, and that's how it's going to be all night long, all right? That's what Satan needs to know, that the more we run, the more we're going to do it, all right? All night long. In 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 41, this is after one of the greatest passages in the entire Bible. Elijah feels like he's the only person left in the entire world that loves God. And the king comes up to him, he's like, everybody's going this other way. And Elijah says, you come with me, and I'll show you how big my God is. Go get all the rest of your priests. Go get all those people that are going after other gods and bring them. And he brought in 450 prophets of Baal, and he said, all right, let's worship Baal right here. You see if your God will send fire out of heaven. I'll see if my God does. And they spent 24 hours yelling and screaming at their God, nothing. And he spends a second, bam, fire out of heaven. And as soon as that happened, this is what happened next. Elijah said to Ahab, they'd been in a place where it was terrible. God was punishing them. There had been famine. There had been no water. There had been no rain. There was a drought going on, just bad things all over the place. God comes and delivers. And the second God delivers, Elijah says to Ahab, upon your feet, eat and drink, celebrate. Rain is on the way. I hear it coming. And sure enough, the seventh time he had said, oh yes, I see a cloud, but it's very small, no bigger than someone's hand, rising out of the sea. And then things happened fast. The sky grew black, the wind-driven clouds, and then a huge cloudburst of rain. The moment the people said, that is my God, you want to know what happened? They looked in the sky. It was completely clear. He said, look there 7 times. He looked once, like, it's clear. Twice, it's clear. 3 times, it's clear. 4 times, still clear. 5 times, clear, clear. 6 times, it's still clear. 7th time, there's a little cloud. There's a little bitty cloud. Oh, that little cloud's getting bigger. That little cloud's on the way. The Bible actually says they had to run down the mountain. This guy Ahab, he was in a chariot with horses, and Elijah said, we better get off this mountain now, or your horse, your chariot, and us, we're going to be stuck up here. And they had to outrun the rain. Why? Because they were celebrating. God did something, and let's celebrate. And when it rains, it pours when God brings it on. All right, we need to celebrate. Why? Because God rewards the triumphant. When we show ourselves faithful to God, when we show ourselves right where God needs to be, then we need to celebrate. We need to spike the ball. We need to dance in the end zone. We need to tell Satan it's coming. And you want to know something? The rain is coming. And we're going to run our hearts out just to escape the rain because it's coming, and that's how great it is. And I love this verse. This is out of the Message Bible. The Message uses words you and I can understand. This is out of Psalms 32:11. It says, celebrate God. Sing together, everyone. All you honest hearts, raise the roof. Why do we celebrate? We celebrate to raise the roof. We celebrate because we want to remember the past. We celebrate to restore what is broken. We celebrate to reward the triumphant, but we celebrate to raise the roof. All right? There's a church that meets above us every single day, and we can hear them singing. I know they can hear us singing. You know, we need them every day saying, man, something's going on downstairs. All right, and one day when we move out of this building, I want people in the neighborhood saying, something's going on there. Are you raising the roof? Whoop, whoop. Are you doing that? Do you have it? Are you that excited about your God? Are you that excited about what Christ can do? I know we get that excited about a ball game. Whoop, whoop. I know we yell for our team, and I know we joke about it, and my boys do good, and your boys do good, or they both do bad, or vice versa. But you know what? We still yell and scream for them. I know I yell when my guy celebrates on the 1-yard line instead of celebrating in the negative 1-yard line, and I yell and scream. But do you yell and scream for God? Do you raise the roof for God? Are you like, I'm excited about what God's doing for me today? We got to raise the roof. People got to know you're excited. We got to sing those praises. We sang some awesome praise songs today, and that's what needs to be in our heart and in our minds and in our lives. Anywhere we go, raise the roof. Let the world know. Shout it out as loud as you can. Celebrate with me. This month is our month of celebration. Come ready to celebrate. Come ready to set up a brand new Ebenezer, a new stone where we say, here forever and ever. This is where we stand. And I know that Satan has been defeated. This building right here, 6 stories tall, wherever we move, wherever we go, every time I drive past it, I'm going to know God did amazing things here. If I could get a big can of spray paint, we could paint Ebenezer on the outside of it. They would never clean it off. It would be there forever. And you would remember this is where God met us. This is where God met with us, right here, where I raised my Ebenezer. This building is one of our Ebenezers. It's a place where I remember God. Tallest building in all of Bethany. And I know here I met with God. Would you all pray with me?